I will talk about 3 surveys. We did a survey in 2014. In 2015, it was Tilly Smith's online worldwide survey. And in 2016, we did another survey, so I will show you what they prove or how lipedema affects quality of life, to have it on paper, like to really see numbers. So our claim is that lipedema can seriously affect quality of life and psychological well-being. And we all know that already. After what we've listened to, when we are patients, we also know that from the experience. But I want to talk briefly why it is so important, why quality of life it is affected so much. So first of all, lipedema is unknown. As you said here we know a little bit about it. We know more than we knew a few years ago, and the knowledge increases a lot. But in general population, with families, friends, medical health providers, doctors, psychologists, they usually don't know what it is. So women, when they come to us as therapists that are helping them, they are usually, after many, many years of struggling to find someone who will believe them that they have lipedema. So very often they have to diagnose themselves first through internet and reading about it, and they find a doctor. It's not the case that the doctor diagnosed them so often. The other thing is we don't know about etiology, where it comes from. We heard it's genetics, it's hormonal, but we don't know exact cause. We also know that lipedema progresses, but we cannot really foresee how it progresses for a certain person. So we are not really sure what might happen in life and how this person will look like in 10 years. There is a lot of confusion around treatment, especially in the internet. We know that liposuction works, we know that compression works, but we don't know exact effects of that, as well as healthy lifestyle and diet. We know that we should eat healthy, but what exactly we should eat? Normal diets don't work. There are some claims that maybe anti-inflammatory diets help a little bit, but there is no research done. The other thing is that lipedema is chronic. So when we know that we have this disease, we have it for life, or we have a risk of lipedemic fat to come back, we have a risk of progression of the illness. It's also connected with several physical consequences, so pain, decreased mobility, loss of muscle strength, and I will show you some research that proves how often it happens. And according to Tilly Schmidt's survey, she surveyed 1,416 women from all over the world, and they were asked what kind of symptoms do they have, what kind of disease they suffer with. And as you may see, fatigue is 82%, cold hands and feet 67, obesity is 50, arthritis 27, thyroid problems 22, and fibromyalgia, according to this survey, is 70.5. In my survey from 2016, we have similar frequencies. In the last survey, we used this tool. It's a lower extremity functional scale, and it measures the ability to perform everyday tasks. So we can say it measures mobility. And it's used by clinicians to measure initial function and also progress of the treatment. And for example, tasks that women are asked about is any of your usual work, housework, or school activities. Do you have any problems with that, and how extreme problems with doing that you have? Or, for example, getting into or out of the bath, or into and out of a car, walking between rooms, walking 2 blocks, walking a mile, going up and down 10 stairs, standing for 1 hour, sitting for 1 hour, and running. And look at our results. So here is percentage of maximal function. Maximal function is like person who can do all these things. As you may see, more than 50% of women that we surveyed have less than 50% of maximal function. What does it mean? It means they are not mobile enough. So it might have a huge impact on their everyday functioning. The other thing that we asked about is symptom severity. We asked about fatigue, and as you can see, it's almost 50% that say it's severe or extremely severe. Joint pain and muscle pain also is very severe in this group. The other feature of lipedema is that it is painful. And according to our research, severe or extremely severe pain was reported by more than 50% of participants. Tenderness, the same thing with tenderness. According to Tilly-Schmidt research, 85% of respondents experience pain. The other thing that is really important is that lipedema is visible. So, it's very often mistaken with obesity. We may say it's kind of disfigurement because it's visible difference in the appearance. And it might lead to self-stigmatization, so it might lead to feelings of shame or guilt, body dissatisfaction, lower self-esteem. And it might also affect social interactions and intimate relationships. Stigmatization is defined as a phenomenon whereby an individual with an attribute which is deeply discredited by his or her society is rejected as a result of the attribute. And research showed that the more visible condition, the more stigmatization. And stigmatization means humiliation, disgust, discrimination, devaluation, aggression, rejection, staring, unsolicited questioning, and name-calling. And I want to show you some quotes from patients who shared those quotes with me in order to show medical health providers and therapists and to tell the world what they experience. Dating was almost impossible, as was close friendships with other girls who didn't want to ruin their own chances of dating. When I'm out, strangers tend to avoid me. They will sit on a different bench. They will wait for the next elevator. They avoid making contact with me at all costs if possible, and certainly not touching. With the surge of smartphones, I now have lovely young men snapping my photo or recording me sometimes. I have no idea why, but they are sometimes caught taking my picture. It feels like complete violation. Men and young men or teenage boys run up to me and insult my appearance. I've been called Shamu the whale. I've been encircled by a group of males while walking and laughed at. It seems I can never go out anywhere, even to my medical appointment, without having an incident. I also do not wish to go out because of my past experiences with nasty people. I'm very tired of the public humiliation because of what my body looks like. I don't feel sexually attractive. I have a hard time believing my spouse truly wishes to engage me in true intimacy. I have to ward off awful thoughts of just being a receptacle. My spouse has never treated me in this way, but it is my own idea of myself. That's what women experience in their everyday life. And it can affect their functioning in many different ways. It can affect their emotional life, leading to fear, sadness, anger, shame, guilt, or anxiety. It affects thoughts, especially self-critical thoughts, blaming themselves, but also avoiding close, intimate relationships or avoiding contact with people. And what is important from the perspective of therapists, it may also affect treatment. So women might have difficulties in adhering to treatment because they think nothing works anyway, because they experience a lot of years of struggling without an effect. It might lead to unhealthy behaviors, because if I'm on a diet and this diet don't work, then why should I eat healthy at all? It might lead to lack of activity because I don't want to go out because people will laugh at me. It may lead to avoiding food, being afraid of eating certain foods. It might be connected with avoiding of eating in the presence of others because they will comment on it. And it may be avoiding of social interactions, especially when in situations when we are prone to judgment. It may also affect them to the extent that they don't go to therapist or to the doctor because they are afraid that they will be judged or laughed at. And here we have results of our survey when it comes to satisfaction with life in women with lipedema. As you may see, more than 60 or 70% are dissatisfied with their life. We also asked about quality of life. We used World Health Organization brief questionnaire that measures quality of life in certain domains. And you can transform scores and compare them to norms. And as you may see, quality of life in every domain is lower than the norm. So when it comes to psychological problems and mental health, from the clinical experience, we know that depression, eating disorders, body dissatisfaction, anxiety, and social isolation might be the problem or are common problems. So in our survey, we also asked about self-report about eating disorders, and in our survey, it was 32%, which is much more than in general population when we talk about 5–6% maybe. And we also measured depression and anxiety with screening tools that are used in medical practice. And I will show you the results in a second. So here are results of depression. We measured it with patient health questionnaire. We can diagnose depression, or we can predict that this person might have depression, and it's more than 50% of women that we asked. Here is anxiety, and what we have on this side of the red line, it's also anxiety that we could say it's clinically really relevant. And we also use Derriford Appearance Scale. It is a scale that measures adjustment to problems of visible difference or disfigurement. It focuses on distress and dysfunction to problems with appearance. So it measures how problems with appearance impact your everyday life. And here you have some questions from the survey with percentage of people for whom it was like extremely, who felt like it's extreme. So you can see I put some questions in red. So for example, how distressed do you get when you go to the beach? 54.6% extremely distressed. And when we take moderately and extremely, it's almost all participants find it distressing. And when we take into account that, for example, swimming is one of the activities that is very good for lipedema patients, and that it is so stressful for them to go somewhere in a swimsuit, we can see how it may impact the progression of the illness, how it may impact the treatment. And why lipedema patients might have so high risk of having depression? First of all, is effort without results. So they diet for ages, they exercise for hours, and they don't have any results. And that leads to feelings of low self-efficacy, like I have no impact on my health. The other thing is chronic pain that itself might cause depression or other medical problems. So what we can do about it? What is important from the perspective of medical health providers? Very important is to screen for depression and to offer support if it's needed. We have many ways of how we can support patients. We can offer some self-help books or web pages, but support groups are very helpful, and sometimes therapy is needed. Another thing, eating disorders. So we can observe certain warning signs when a patient is talking about their eating habits. For example, adopting overly restrictive diets, which is, as Dr. Stutz said, very normal in lipedema because women want to lose weight. So what they do, they diet, and if it doesn't work, they try to become more restrictive because they think if I eat less, maybe that works better. They may have excessive focus on healthy eating, and by excessive I mean something that takes up most part of the day, that they might resign from work, passions, or relationships because they are concerned on controlling food. They are thinking about their appearance for the most part of the day, frequently checking in the mirror for perceived flaws or weighing themselves many times a day, or on the other hand, they may avoid weighing at all. The biggest risk factor of eating disorders is dieting itself. There was some research that dieting leads to eating disorders or increases the risk of eating disorders. And taking into account that most women with lipödema go on a diet at some point, it explains why it happens so often to them that they may have eating disorder. More often, they also have no results, so they diet for longer. And that's why eating disorders might be so common. And it just works on a biological level. So when we go on a diet, our body just wants to do everything not to lose weight. And it also works on psychological level. So when we try not to think about this wonderful cake with a chocolate crust and some cherries, we immediately start to think about it because it is as if our brain didn't really hear the word no. And that might impact how we give advice on healthy eating. When we give advice, we shouldn't talk about diet at all. We should focus on healthy eating. And when I say healthy eating, we should be also flexible. Like 80% we eat healthy, but 20% we can eat whatever we want, unless we have some allergy or some comorbidity. So in order not to increase the risk of having eating disorders, we should think about how we give diet advice on healthy eating. And the last thing I want to talk about when it comes to medical problems is social isolation, which happens because of this hostility that you've heard before, that leads to shame, that leads to avoidance, and that leads to social isolation. And social isolation itself might be very unhealthy. This is a result of meta-analysis that shows increased mortality, premature mortality, and certain risk factors. And as you may see, loneliness or lack of social connection is as risky as excessive smoking. Hostile social interaction might lead to more inflammation, which might lead to progression of the illness. This is a study that was done with couples. They were invited to the lab and they had to talk about something that is a conflict, and they were classified as high conflict couples or low conflict couples. And then they were given a suction blister wound, and scientists measured number of days for full healing of wounds. And what they have proven is that in high conflict couples, the number of days was longer than in low conflict couples. So it is a research that proves that hostile interactions might actually make inflammation worse. So we can conclude that good relationships might promote faster healing and physical health. And implications for the treatment is that our patients need social support and social connection. And we as a health care providers can provide some kind of social support by listening to our patients, by showing compassion, by responding to questions. But also we can encourage them to become member of support group or to build their own support network. That is very important. So what I want to spend a few minutes on is how patients can make their quality of life better. Because as a psychologist, I always look for solutions. What can we do even if we cannot do anything? I mean, in the situation when we have chronic illness and the treatment is difficult to get, what we can do to make it better. Psychological flexibility is basically acceptance of what we cannot change, like acceptance of the illness, of feelings that we have, choosing what is important for us and taking actions. The other thing is social connection, and by social connection we mean this interaction when you become vulnerable with someone, you share some intimate details and you get loving response. So we mean really close, intimate relationships with experience of connectedness, and it's associated with greater mental and physical health, and we can also have some psychological interventions to help people get those abilities. The third thing, very important, is self-compassion. So compassion is deep awareness of the suffering of another with the wish to relieve it. So I want to help you. I understand that you are suffering and I want to help you. And self-compassion is extending compassion to oneself, especially in instances of perceived inadequacy, failure, or general suffering. So self-compassion is connected with this sentence, it is not my fault, I am suffering. I'm having all these difficult emotions, I'm having pain, it's really hard for me. And it's not my fault, I don't have to be self-critical, I can find space to feel what I feel and actually take care of myself in the best way that is possible in these circumstances. So our conclusion, overall conclusion, is that psychological flexibility and social connectedness might be useful when we consider treatments, psychological treatments, improving quality of life, and that it is very important to improve adjustment to visible changes in our patients. And here we think of role of social support, self-compassion, and psychological flexibility. And also we need to focus on ways to prevent depression, which is a very severe disease that is connected to suicides also. And our claim is that psychological and biomedical interventions for women with lipedema merit more attention from researchers and the medical community than is currently received. And at the end, I just wanted to tell certain things, what we can do. So what we can do in our work with patients, we can listen and try to understand patients' perspective, to sort of see reality with patients' eyes, listen with compassion, offer acceptance, offer support and understanding. We can cooperate, so we can focus on goals of behavior change, but we should define them in cooperation with patients. We can direct patients' attention on what is possible to change. There's always something we can do, always. So we just need to figure out what it is with this certain patient. And encourage self-care and body acceptance. And if needed, we need to offer consultation with psychologists or psychiatrists, or maybe some self-help resources. Thank you.